So here I am today with Lux9, Kate and Alexia. We're going to talk about branding, I guess, of Calabogie Peaks and how to position it for even more success.
Well, thank you so much. And since we're turning it into a show, we're going to play it this way as well.
There we go.
So we've gathered together to what end? Well, we're here to talk to experts in a variety of fields on a variety of topics so that we are well-informed strategists as we journey to redefining and supporting the parrot brand ethos at Calabogie Peaks. So that's why we're doing it today. And so here today, we've got Bruce, and Bruce has been both a coach and he has had an illustrious career. Even this person who knows nothing of sport and has only been to 2 hockey games in her life knows that he had something to do with the Ottawa Senators. So he's a guy who brings fun into backyards everywhere across Canada. And as an expert in the world of cities, houses, homes, community, we want to talk about the opportunity around repositioning Calabogie and the target markets in there. So kicking it off, I love talking about millennials. They're a massive cohort. They're a group of people who have changed how they spend both money and time. And I want to hear, what's your take when you think about positioning Calabogie to potential target markets, starting with the millennials? What are they going to care about? Go.
Well, thank you very much for putting me on the spot. And it is great to be here. So I can tell you something that I think Calabogie is not. And I think Calabogie Peaks has great potential. In fact, I think I saw more potential in it than a lot of other people sooner. That would be my claim here anyway. And I can tell you what it is not. It is not a destination for retirement residences or a retirement population, in my opinion. And I think you have already picked out the 2 cohorts that make sense for Calabogie Peaks. One is the millennials. I've got 5 kids. They would fit into that. And the other is the boomer generation, which I also fit into. And the reason for that is that retirement folks who are really ready for a retirement residence, they need all kinds of support and all kinds of services. It's a much more complicated environment than people think about. Even before the pandemic, really impacted long-term care facilities in Canada and elsewhere. So that is not what Calabogie is. I do think it's going to be, Kate and Alexia, it's going to be both of those cohorts. And I'd like to share with you just a quick story, if I may. One of my daughters, Rachel, is a very successful high-level executive. I think she's like a vice president now in a very substantial Toronto-based insurance company of vast scale. And she and her husband would like to start a family, and she'd also, of course, like to continue to be successful in her work. And, to buy a home in Toronto, I don't have to tell you guys this, but to buy a home in Toronto is very expensive. And even though they're both Rachel and her husband, Patrick, are very successful individuals, they're still young. And, buying a $2 million or $2.5 million house is quite the stretch. So they got permission, Rachel did and Patrick did, to buy in Whitby. And when you taught me that term, Zoomtown, I was, as soon as I learned what it was, I was thinking of Whitby, Ontario, which is within an hour or 2 of a larger center, in this case, Toronto. And I'll bet you there's 300,000 or 400,000, this is just a complete guess on my part, young people, all in their 20s and 30s, who have received permission from their employer to leave San Francisco. I have 2 clients in San Francisco, the 2 tech guys. They both live in Boise, Idaho now. They make San Francisco salaries, they live in Boise. Rachel and Patrick, they don't live in Toronto. They have a beautiful home in Whitby, which would be about 1/3 of the cost of a Toronto home equivalent.
You're right.
And they can make a Toronto salary. So I think Calabogie should try and benefit from the same kind of exodus that will happen from a larger center like Ottawa. Ottawa's still a small town. Between Ottawa and Gatineau, it's only 1.3 million people, but that's a lot bigger than Calabogie.
Yeah. And so when you think about them, do you see millennials coming to Calabogie with for their primary housing as a Zoom, or do you see it as leisure housing, recreational property?
I think that's a really key question, and I'm going to share my screen with you if you don't mind.
Sure, of course, go for it.
All right. So let's see if I've got it here. I booted up a couple of slide decks. Everyone seems to enjoy listening to Malcolm Gladwell, a Canadian expat living in New York City. And I just pulled up a quote for you here, which is in bold at the bottom. The single most important thing that a city, and I would say a city, a town, or a village can do is provide a community where interesting, smart people want to live with their families. Now, that's what I think is the future of Calabogie Peaks. And you know, to some extent, I suspect you, Lux9, and perhaps the ownership and others will not agree with me, but I have been consistent on this ever since you know, I was first introduced and started doing a bit of coaching. The single most important thing that Calabogie Peaks can do is provide a community where interesting, smart people want to live with their families. And I would probably add, want to live and work, because the live-work condition is great. You know, really, Kate, the days of where people get up, you know, in the morning, they in their suburban house, they get into their Tesla, they drive an hour and a half through LA traffic to go downtown, to go into the 20th or 30th floor of an office building with bad air, bad fluorescent lighting, windows that don't open, work 8, 10, 12 hours, come down the elevator, maybe they get sick, drive another hour or an hour and a half home, and repeat that 5 times a week. I think that is really not a good way to organize our cities and towns. And so I went one step further, and I just put this out there for you. What I think Calabogie wants to do, or should do, this again, it's just my opinion, and again, people may not agree with me, I know that. Mixed use community. So it's a mixed use community where people can live in affordable, live, work, play, create, make, learn, grow, entertain, shop, exercise, grow, socialize, diversified, visible, neo-urbanist, walkable, animated neighborhoods that are both environmentally and economically sustainable. The reason I say that is if you are probably aware that Calabogie Peaks, before I started coaching them, started building townhomes and condos that had lock-off suites. You're aware of that?
Yep.
And when I saw that, because I preach this stuff, you know, I coach in the United States and Canada, a little bit overseas. And when I saw that, I said, Paul, to Paul Murphy and Jim Hemlin and Liz Murphy and the rest of the group, I said, that is fantastic. You should put those on the market. And they did. And I don't remember the exact numbers, Kate, but they sold 36 of them. I think they called them the Cedars, in like 5 weeks or something like that. Now that wouldn't be a very big amount in a city like Toronto or LA, but that's a heck of a lot in Calabogie. And
it sure is. No, that's an interesting barometer.
What people really wanted, whether they're young or they're my age, they really wanted a place where they could live and work and make some money.
Where the property could make some money, or where they could make some money?
Both.
Okay. Interesting. And they wanted it turnkey.
Well, what do you mean by that?
The capability that it either seamlessly enters into a rental management system or has a lock and leave component. So these are, when we start talking about people, these are people who love their leisure, love their recreation, aren't interested in maintenance. They're not interested in having to fix it. In and out. Simple. So
I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
So just because I referenced it, I wanted to boot up a picture of the Cedars. They just blew out a whole bunch of these. And if they had, Kate, I kid you not, if they had 50 or 100 more, in my opinion, right now they could sell them all.
Yep.
In Ottawa, you may or may not be aware of the fact that Shopify is a major employer in Ottawa.
I'm currently situated an hour and 10 minutes from Ottawa.
I apologize for.
Hi, neighbor.
But you know, Toby Lutke, who's one of the co-founders there, they closed their head office last year on Elgin Street, which is right downtown Ottawa. You know, because of the pandemic, everybody went home. And then about 6 or 8 months later, Toby and his folks decided to make the closure of the headquarters permanent. And they are not going to reopen it. And Shopify has now said to everybody, whether you're living in San Francisco or you're living in Toronto or you're living in Calabogie Peaks, that you can now apply for any job at Shopify from anywhere in the world. You can be in Spain and you can apply to work with Shopify. So they have gone full, not quite full, but largely a remote work situation. So that to me is a very important part. And if you look at the drawing on the screen here, this is the Cedars, and you can see on the left-hand side the small self-contained suite. It has its own bathroom, it has its own micro kitchen, it has its own ingress and egress to the outside, but it also has a connecting door. This raises the possibility of people who are working for Shopify or anywhere else who have got permission to work remotely. They can go and live in a nice apartment of their own, and then they have a lock-off suite where they can run their business, or they can put it on Airbnb, or for that matter, if they wanted to take in an elderly person and look after him or her, they could. That is what I think is the future. Not everybody agrees with me, but that's where I think they should go.
Okay. And so when you're thinking, like, when you think about your millennials, we've talked about, I think there's a Zoomtown potential. There is primary housing potential. There's leisure housing or recreational property potential. Let's go to the boomers and the empty nester. We look at these people as a unique group. New highways coming in. It means that trip to Calabogie and its connection to Ottawa is much shorter.
Right.
I can get from Canada to Calabogie in 45 minutes, no problem. I know I come from Toronto, so my perception around travel is very different from an Ottawa audience. However, I feel like it's starting to shrink a little bit more.
It's right.
It's a reality.
I still get heck cake 25 years or 30 years later for putting the Canadian Tire Center in Canada instead of downtown.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you do. Like you're like, what were you doing? Putting it out in the middle of blank nowhere.
Exactly.
So there's that experience that we're starting to shorten the commute distance.
Yeah.
But when you think about a boomer who still wants to be connected, but is federal or provincial workers, government workers. There's probably a 2-pension family. There's equity in their home in Ottawa.
Right.
They downsize and they're looking for a what? And I want you to define for us, are they looking for $1 million pad, a $1.5 million pad? So let's talk about, moving out of Ottawa and choosing Calabogie, and you're 55 to 65 years of age, making that shift. You're going to live to 95 years of age and you're going to live well. And you also know that you might have kids and you want to create a center for your family to be in. Right. So when you think about that, talk to us about the appetite, because this is an important thing, because we believe that we have to always consider our starting from prices. We have to think about what we're building so we get the brand right. So do they come in with a 1.25 million ready to drop because they can get something big on the ridge? Do they, what's that price point in your opinion? And what is it, what else is out there that's attracting their money and their attention?
Okay, so I'm going to sound like a broken record, and by the time we finish, you'll be tired of hearing me talk about it. But I work with other developers in that area who are having success, and what we find is the demand for multi-generational living is off the charts. And so, again, in my opinion, I have 5 kids and a bunch of grandchildren. I love them all. But if I was buying a home at Calabogie Peaks, I would, again, want a lock-off suite, because it's great to have the grandkids and the children visit, but it's also great if they have an independent place where they can stay, right? So what we have found is that people who are buying lots, for example, are building very expensive homes, but they will have a walkout basement where they can have an independent ingress and egress, and they'll have an independent apartment. So what we find is you've got a major home, and it can be, $1.5, $2.5 million home, but it will have, typically on a slope, it'll have a walkout condition, and there will be a 2 or even 3 bedroom, sometimes even bigger, a basement apartment. And that can be used to generate income, but it also is a multiple generation home. So it could be people my age living with children and grandchildren, or at least having them visit. So that is where I think the demand is, or at least a lot of the demand is.
So creating operational efficiency in the construction process is critical. And so would you say that same flip Your Luck-Off suite for a millennial then is a COVID office, income generator, and nanny suite.
Yeah,
Or
I
granny
think
suite.
that's right. That's exactly right. I mean, you probably are familiar with, brownstones that were built in the 1880s right through until probably the 1930s, maybe even the 1950s. They were like, they had I think I even have a picture of it somewhere here, but they typically, if you know what I'm talking about, brownstones
Yep.
they were beautiful to look at. And, they called them the garden level suites. And if I can find one here, I'll show it to you. And that's where the nanny, the gardener, lived. Or in this case, that's where, that's where the kids, if they came to visit you, that's where they would live or stay.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes
We
any
love it.
that's probably what, yeah, I have a picture of it here. Give me a second. I'll just show you a couple of brownstones.
Oh, we're well versed in brownstones. We
Yeah, I
just
know,
finished
but there's something else, Kate, please forgive me.
Of course, no problem.
There's something else that I wanted to show you as well, get it on the record. This is a group in Ottawa called Phoenix Homes. And Phoenix Homes has produced homes like this that are off the charts successful. They're not that far from Calabogie, believe it or not. They're actually way up in West Carleton next to the Carp Airport.
Yep. Yeah.
And they came up with this wonderful name. They call them Income Series Homes. And I'll just show you here. Here's a floor plan of one of them. This is called, I think, the Sonora. And you can see that you've got the home is here. You come in the door here. I don't know, it may be too small on your screen. You come in here. There's a vestibule here. Hang a right. This is the main part of the house. You go down the stairs, and you're into this lock-off suite, if you will, in the basement, which is quite a sizable thing. And the demand for these is off the charts. And again, it can be used for all the different kinds of things we talked about before. And the idea of income series homes is not new. And this is just a bunch of brownstones. And look at the garden level suites here. I know you know what they are, but the rich dudes would live up here, Kate, and then the nanny and others would live here.
Thank you. No, it's good. It's really good.
All right, that's it.
No, we love it. We love it. I think that it's when you're thinking about the real estate market and you think about an Ottawa player, it's a great way to de-risk.
You got that. You got it exactly right, because you put that in your agenda, and I was thinking it definitely will de-risk it. Not only will it de-risk it for Calabogie Peaks and the developers and the builders, but it will de-risk it for the buyers and even the tenants.
I see it as a major way to get an Ottawa individual to spend more, right? Like when you think about the Ottawa market.
You got that right. And I can tell you, because it's well known, that if you were a home builder, your margins on a typical house are only about 13%. Your gross profit margin is 13%. It's pretty small. And typically what you do is once you sell a house, you try and sell people on upgrades. Come and pick out some nicer kitchen cabinets, some nicer plumbing fixtures, lighting fixtures, flooring, etc. And on those upgrades, it's about 40%. But what Phoenix and others have found, Kate and Alexia, is that if they add a basement apartment, like the brownstones had back in the day, or the Phoenix Sonora home has, that their margin on that is about 80%. So it's a way of obviously, de-risking it from the point of view of the buyer, but also from the point of view of the builder, because your margins are much greater. From the point of view of a buyer, if he or she pays $120 or even $150 or $200,000 more for the basement apartment to have it all fit up, if they had to do it themselves, it would cost them at least that, if not more. So why not have a turnkey situation? That's where the market is, in my opinion. One other part of the market that I think you should look at, in my opinion, again, is that many of the baby boomers are, in fact, really good with technology. And they are selling their Ottawa home. They're getting now $1.5 to $2.5 million. And what they want is a place that, where they can, maybe in the summertime, they can enjoy lake activities. In the wintertime, they've got the ski hill at Calabogie. But during the long Ottawa winters, they like to go south. So I do think that this is, to me, it's not a secondary home market. I don't think so. There'll be some. But I think the market really will be people my age, some younger, some older, who will sell their homes for a bunch of money, buy a place at Calabogie, and buy a place in the United States.
To be quite frank, that's exactly where we want to direct them to. We feel like that's where the dollar gets the highest. It's right. This is also where you start to create a community. And you showed Malcolm's quote earlier on. And yeah, smart people with their family having community connection. That happens when you're there for 12 months. It doesn't happen when you're there for 8 weeks, right? Like it doesn't even happen in a ski season, you know, because it's usually, even with the skier programs, it's very transient because you're in it when your kids are in it. And when the kids ditch you, you ditch skiing.
Right on.
So hence why I didn't have kids, so I can still ski. So
Bruce,
go for it, Lex.
when you're thinking about this lock-off suite in Calabogie, are there other competitors that are doing something similar in the area, or do you see that there's a particular demographic or persona that will be more drawn to this type of offering?
So both of the, I coach 3 developers in that area, Calabogie Peaks and 2 others. And both of the others, Alexia, are stressing, they have a lot of lots, very high-end lots, you know, for Ottawa, you know, a lot in downtown San Francisco. One of my clients just bought one. It's, I think it's 50 feet by 100, so 5,000 square foot lot, $2.1 million US for the lot. So that isn't an Ottawa price, but you know, lots in Ottawa now are $450,000 to $650,000, you know, for a lot in a decent suburb. So it's up a lot, but it's not San Francisco type numbers. But having said that, both of the other developers, they're selling their lots with homes where they're stressing multiple generations. So the home itself will have the basement apartment plus a coach house. You know what a coach house is, I'm sure, right, Alexia? And you guys are probably familiar with Bill 108. Bill 108 was brought in by the Ontario government, I think in 2019, which legalized throughout Ontario that you could have your principal residence or a house with an apartment in it and a coach house. Before that, in many jurisdictions, including Ottawa, it was either or. You could have a coach house or an in-home apartment, but not both. But Bill 108 got rid of that, and because the province is trying to encourage people to have, to have more housing. We need more housing for sure. And so this was a way to do it with one signature, I guess, of the premier.
And what tell me a little bit about the rental market in Calabogie, because, you know,
yeah, that's a good question.
I have a partner, and if we were, let's say, wanted to buy a place in Calabogie and rent out this lock-off suite, like, what does that rental market look like?
That's an interesting question. What surprised me, and I think Jim Hemlin and Paul Murphy and the others that I talked to there, was when we looked at how those lock-off suites were used. Young people, maybe your age, Alexia, and some younger, were actually living in the lock-off suite, renting out the big area because they could get more money for it. What was your question again? Alexia,
what's the rental market like in Calabogie?
What's the rental market like? So I think it's pretty good. There's 2 different types of prospective tenants, I think, for Calabogie Peaks. People, again, baby boomers, people my age, might prefer to rent rather than buy. There is a market for that, because I don't have to tell you guys this. If you own your own home and something goes wrong, guess who has to fix it? You do. So if you want cost certainty and protection from the Residential Tenancy Act, which is pretty favorable, I think, to tenants, renting is a perfectly valid option. Say you're 65 years of age, you sold your house for $2.5 million. You only intend to be in Calabogie Peaks for a couple of weeks around Christmas time, so you can go ski and see your family, and the rest of the time you're going to be in Florida or Arizona. And so that is a real rental market. And then you've got people like my oldest daughter and her husband who would like to, have some additional income from their lock-off suite. And in Calabogie, I think the market is quite strong for Airbnb listings.
Yeah.
It's got lots going on there.
I think so. And, you know, everybody was writing off Airbnb last year when at the beginning of the pandemic, Airbnb went from, you know, 90% or 80% occupancy in their listings down to maybe 15%, you know, but boy, did it ever come back. So I do think that there's a great market for that. Something, Kate, that you mentioned earlier, though, if it was clients of mine buying up in Calabogie Peaks, we would not want to go, or I would not want them to go into the rental pool. Some will choose that, but I think it's very important to give people the option of doing it themselves. A lot of people like to do it themselves.
Interesting. Well, and I think there's lots of tools, frankly, to do it yourself, which
Well,
is,
you know, I have many clients, you know, ranging from former students of mine buying their first investment property to a few billionaires that I coach, and everybody's a little bit different. But I can tell you the demand for Airbnb and theming Airbnbs. I've got one lady. She's a single mom. She has a beautiful one-room log home in Quebec in the middle of nowhere, and she themed it as a romantic getaway. And she was told she could rent it for about $1,000 a month. She gets between $5,000 and $6,000 a month by theming it as a romantic getaway, and it works for her. And her guests seem to really love it. And she's a super host and all the rest of that. And the difference between earning $1,000 a month and $5,000 or $6,000 a month is quite a lot. It has been a life-changing event. So people really want independence. They don't want to be locked into a rental pool.
nice. Interesting. Good. Thinking about, you know, there's this kind of current groundswell that we're all starting to see. We're seeing some take up in the past, and this is partly COVID. This is partly, you know, addition of a few new players into the town of Calabogie, new businesses, accommodation options, and so we really we look at this as it's good news. I see it as, you know, Lex and I both like waves and water. So we see it as like there's a good wave set that's starting to kind of come to fruition. We're not quite riding a wave, but there's a wave set that's ready to be had. And so it's really quite important for us as we roll out that we've got ourselves curated and ready for this future population. Do you have comments on kind of how do we be in a leadership position when you think about what is starting to percolate? And what's starting to kind of be seen as Calabogie, like people are starting to see it. Where do you think is kind of the unique value proposition or that leadership position that we need to garner and own, cultivate and curate so that we can win when we actually jump on our boards and ride this wave?
Wow, that's quite the way of phrasing the question. I love it.
Good.
Really well done. Yeah, beautifully done. So I do think that I mean, you know, because I do so much coaching now, I mean, I stand in front of this computer, like, you know, I don't want to tell you the number of hours a day I do it. And I really like doing it. I'm going to do it until, you know, I go see St. Peter, you know, because it's fun, really. And I get to, you know, meet interesting and neat people like you two guys. But I really think that if you position it as another high-end resort, and that is your positioning, you will not have the success that I think everybody wants. You know, and again, I know I've talked to a lot of people about this, and many of them don't agree with me, and that's perfectly fine. I'm just a coach, you know, I'm a lowly engineer. But I think, does the world really need another high-end resort? How many high-end resorts are there around the world? You know, I don't know. There's a lot. And, you know, you can go to
Well, and we're never going to be satisfied because there's not enough population from Ottawa, Kingston, or otherwise.
So. I don't think so. So to me, the uniqueness.
Get into this. Let's unpack this. I'm coming for you.
Okay, so the uniqueness of Calabogie Peaks, in my opinion, Kate, is that it should be a live, work, play, make, create community. So live is obviously doesn't need any definition. Work, we all know what work from home looks like, and Zoom towns are a part of that. But the rest of it is not the usual branding. The make, create, learn, socialize. That is really, really important. I mean, I'm not going to ask you any personal questions, but I'll bet you've already had, both of you had at least 2 or 3 different careers already, and you're both a lot younger than me. By the time you're 70, you know, maybe you've had 5 or 6 careers. So lifetime learning is a huge deal. And how many people do you know, how many of your friends, older than you, younger than you, peers of yourself, of yourselves, how many of them have started gigs in the last 2 years? I'll bet you a lot of people. So I have been saying to Paul and his team for a long time that I think Calabogie Peaks should be entrepreneur headquarters. And people should go there, and they should be able to not just work for the government or Shopify and work from home. Fine, nothing wrong with that. But I think people will also want workshops, maker spaces, co-working spaces, meetup areas, meetup zones, assuming that we can one day really get back to something resembling normalcy. But that's where I think you should go. And I think having the play part of it, the summer and winter play is huge. I think it's huge, but that is not enough, in my opinion, to populate 2,000 units in Calabogie Peaks.
Interesting. Okay. I don't like using the word entrepreneurial because not everyone can jump into that. So I want to challenge you a little bit on how do we make that more inclusive as a language? So we like to talk a little bit about a gig economy worker, digital nomad, or let's talk about maybe is there other vernacular that you use because
I call them gigpreneurs.
Okay, that's good.
Just to give you an example,
that's good.
I have a 4,500 square foot industrial building. This is a tiny little building. It was empty, so that would have been about 2 years ago. And I was talking to my wife. I said, "What the heck are we going to do with this? It's just a little tiny. It's in the middle of nowhere." And we thought, well, we'll turn it into we thought we'd turn it into an event center because it's kind of a cool building for my coaching. And then the pandemic hit, and nobody wanted to get together. So that we turfed that. And then we said, well, just turn it into storage. But there's a million storage places. Nobody wanted that. So what we did was we built out inside the building about 12 different little workshops, anything from 200 square feet, which is very small, to I think the biggest is 900 square feet. So they're small. And I put 2 Kijiji ads, and it's not in the city, it's outside the city of Ottawa, on the way to Calabogie, actually. And I put 2 Kijiji ads out there, or it would be Craigslist in other jurisdictions. So it cost me, I think, $125 one month and $125 the next month. And every one of the workshops filled up, like literally in the next 2 months or 3 months. I've got a cigar box guitar maker there. Do you know what cigar box guitars are?
Lex will know this.
Lex?
Cigar box guitars?
Yeah.
I don't actually.
Oh my
He's a musician in the house.
I know, but I play piano, not guitar.
Oh, I have to show you this just for the.
But I love that. I love this because I like the gigpreneur. I like that language because we do see that there's this changing face of the economy, right? How could you deny it? And we've both, worked south of the border. We've lived in digital, so we understand. Lex used to manage a team of writers across the globe, so she's funny. So yeah. So very similar thing. I have 2,500 square feet in Toronto, industrial retail warehouse space.
Yeah.
Used to be our office. We're not going to use it. Guess what? Somebody's manufacturing fantastic
So I have
CBD gummies and creams.
Okay, hang on. So in this little industrial building, I have a lady who makes handmade soaps and distributes it to boutique stores. A guy who's older than me, so they're really old, who makes cigar box guitars. I've got a group that does dog training. Who knew? I've got another group who make e-catamarans, electric boats. Another group, a master timber framer. Another one's a welder. I mean, there's 8.2 or 8.3 million Canadians were on the CERB benefit last year, the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit last year, and I think 36 million Americans were unemployed. Many of them voluntarily unemployed, by the way. And I think millions of them are not going back to the JOB. You know what JOB stands for, right? Journey of the Broke. They're starting gigs and side hustles. I wish I had 45,000 square feet on this lot in the middle of nowhere. I would have rented them all. Yeah.
No, I love it. I know this is really good. This is really good because I think when we are, our experience with master plan communities, generally speaking, we are in large urban centers. We are carving out innovation districts. We're bringing 9,000 jobs. We're looking at either medical sciences, research, industrial, appropriately, applied. But this is a unique little place. And gigpreneur fits, right? Because there is a heart and soul that happens with Calabogie that doesn't happen anywhere else. Correct. Which is why I think you have to be a bit nature first in this.
Yeah.
And
you're probably familiar with, with what Cabinscape is doing at Calabogie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, I raised this and I got shot down. I still have the bullet holes to prove it. But, I do think that Calabogie should offer a mix of housing.
Yes, we agree.
I've done many different subdivisions. Okay, I built almost 2,000 homes, dozens of subdivisions, and my subdivisions are well known for having homes that are townhomes, single families, condos.
Yes, we love housing diversity within any of our plans. You've got to, because that's how you allow for age.
Next to this little industrial building, I built this summer. I built, believe it or not, I built a home in 192 square feet.
Very cool.
Very cool. I don't want to call it a tiny home because that conjures up, something that looks like a gypsy van on wheels. It's a foundation and everything. 192 square foot. When I put it up for lease, I just did it because I was bored, and I have this theory that people want to live and work. So they got a little workshop. Why not have a bunkie, right? It's a 4-season bunkie. I built it 192 square feet. And when I put it up on Kijiji, we had 30 offers to lease this little building. It's a sweetheart of a little building. It's got everything you'd want in it, but it's 192 square feet. So that, to me, that tells me, imagine if we had a tiny house community. And again, I think you're right about being careful about terminology, Kate, because that conjures up, like I said, gypsy vans. I'm talking about really sweetheart little bunkies ranging in size from 200 square feet to 500 square feet. If that was, and it doesn't have to be right next to the rich dude has his $2.5 million home, but
yes.
Paul and his group have a huge amount of land, and so I raised it, but I got shot down, and I've got the bullet holes to prove it.
That's okay. Okay, not a problem. I can appreciate that. We'll help you patch up.
But if you had one part of your branding was a tiny house community, give it a better name than that, and it was in a position where it wouldn't affect the property values of other, you would create a huge. We had a tiny house showing in Perth, Ontario. If you know Perth.
Yes. Yes.
It's a tiny little town. I don't know, maybe 8,000 people live there. We had 35,000 visitors in a 4-day long weekend a few years ago.
Really?
Before the pandemic. Yeah.
And was it a lakefront tiny home sort of resort?
It was just a tiny home, like it was in the fairgrounds there, where people could bring, all these really clever designers, people who did the design for my little bunkie are like, they're super smart. They're young people, right? The girl who's living in the place now, she's 30 years of age and loving it, and she's a seamstress, and she has her seamstress operation in the 4,500 square foot building. I forgot to mention that. So I've got a seamstress and a fashion designer who's doing very well. She has 300,000 followers on Instagram.
Oh, I love it.
It's awesome. So there's, to me, if you want to really, just blow the doors off of Calabogie Peaks, I think we have to open our minds to not just to be another resort, in my opinion.
And I think that you'll find that, the master plan is certainly not in that place of resort. We are making recommendations.
I've seen the master plan. And as I said, when I suggested something a little bit different, I did get, some criticism for it.
Well, part of every master plan we've ever worked on is a process of making sure everyone gets to share, because they always change. That you can count on.
The other thing that I would add to your master plan, you've already got it there, I'm sure, because I have seen it. But one of the things that I would stress as well is something I call a playland. And I'll explain what that means. You've obviously got the lake there and you've got the mountain there. So you've got a fabulous opportunity to develop a playland. But there's some other elements that I think are really important that I'm seeing in other subdivisions that I'm involved with, especially in the States, where they have, generally speaking, better weather than we do, but which isn't hard, by the way. But in all seriousness, one of the things that we're doing, I've got a project that I'm coaching in Curacao, if you know where Curacao is. It's a small island. It belongs to the Kingdom of the Netherlands. It's kind of southeast of Aruba. I was there a couple of months ago, and it's a 1,400-acre new town that's being developed in Curacao. It's fabulous. At the center of that is a brand new water park being designed by these fabulous Dutch designers, and an entire playland that goes with it. And playland is something where you have sports that appeal to all generations. And I'll give you an example of that. You guys will know this. The fastest growing sport in the world today is pickleball.
Yep.
There's, so here I am, 70 years of age. I could play pickleball with you two guys, and I could hold my own. And the reason for that is, as you know, it's a wiffle ball. So no matter how fast you guys can run or how hard you can hit it, as soon as it comes off your racket, it slows down. And I'm a pretty good pickleball player. So I can play
Pickleball and chicken.
There you go. But I can play with, people your age, my kids' age, my grandkids' age. And so it's a multiple generation. So it's really important to have, things like bocce and pickleball, outdoor ping pong. So it's not just, people who are doing, snowboard tricks and skiing and, kiteboarding. You've got all the sports that all the generations can play together. Families that play together stay together.
So shared recreational amenities. I love it. Like that's really
And
ways to
the amenities, Kate, that everybody can play. So you don't have a 3-on-3 basketball court. That's just teenagers hanging around smoking and drinking and getting into fights, right?
Got it.
You don't see many people fighting on the pickleball courts. You see 80-year-old ladies playing pickleball and playing well, and you see 12-year-olds, playing super well. So that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about, and that's certainly something we're really emphasizing in Curacao.
Interesting. I wanted to, Lex, is there anything that you wanted quick feedback on?
No, I think from a persona standpoint, we've got boomer and we have millennial. Is there one that you think, in your opinion, Bruce, has greater potential, or do you feel like they both are an opportunity of equal importance?
So I do not like ghettos, whether they're well-designed or accidental ghettos. You may be too young, but if you have any friends who are in retirement residences, go and visit them. They typically have, one of my best friends is 92 now. He's in a retirement residence. He has a room that is very, very small. He has it's not even a bed, he has a cot, really. He has a window that he can open about this far, no balcony. He could open this so he can sort of stick his nose against the screen to get some fresh air. He does not have a kitchen. He has a kettle, not allowed to have a microwave. He has a kettle. He doesn't have a hot plate. I think he has a toaster. Has a table big enough, Alexia, to sit at with me and his granddaughter, 3 people max. And of course, he has a bathroom. Now they have beautiful, lobbies and such. But the rooms themselves are. What do you think, Lexi? What do you think he pays for that?
Oh,
we
yeah,
know.
we've worked in seniors. Yeah.
$8,000 to 10.
No, he pays $6,200 a month.
Yeah.
It's in Canada. And the only reason he's there is because his wife's on a different floor and she has Alzheimer's. It's just like The Notebook. He goes and takes care of her every day, but he still drives and he still does stuff, but he really hates it there. He said to be in a place where there's only elderly people is horrible. You talk to elders, they want to see, young women and young men and kids, they want all of that. And so I think, again, part of the gigpreneur, techno nomad, or whatever we're talking about here, I think we're talking about a mixture of ages. And when I say multiple generations, I really mean that. And I think that's the way of the future. One of those lock-off suites, Kate, if I get too old, I'll move into one of them, and one of my daughters or one of my sons will take care of me. at least I
You
hope,
hope.
as opposed to a retirement residence, which I will not do. I will walk off on the ice floe before I do that.
We
So
hear you.
I think that, so Lex, I think you want to appeal to both groups, the millennials and the boomers, and they will bring little kids and they will bring elders with them.
Okay, good.
Our spirit is always diversity in housing typology, so you can meet, a range of people, a range of lifestyles in a range of life stages. And I know you've heard that before. So that's what makes a community interesting, right? That's what, you can take a look at American cities that didn't have downtowns that flourished, and at 5 o'clock everybody left and went to their business, their bedroom community, and instead of spending an evening in the city, and that was ghettoization through all kinds of markets throughout North
Right.
America.
Right.
And this is, you have businesses thrive when you have a 9 to 5. You have a business thrive when you have a 5 to 9. So we want to make sure that we have a group of people that are going out for lunch and a group of people that are still going out for dinner. And some
Right.
of them are having dinner at 5 and others are having them at 8.
One of the things that I recommend, and again, I got shot down on this, but what the hell, I got another chance here.
Yeah, we're listening.
For now, and then you can hang up and ignore me. But one of the things I would probably do early on is I would put together an industrial building in Calabogie Peaks with small workshops from 200 to 1,500 square feet.
Yeah, micro office space, maker space.
Micro office space,
Yep.
co-working space,
Yep.
Digital nomad space, but not just
Yeah,
that.
I love it.
So just so you know, not just co-working space for the guy with the laptop or the gal with the laptop, not just that, because if you exclude the makers, you're going to miss out on just an enormous worldwide change. It's all localized now. If you could buy something local instead of buying it, off a container ship coming from Asia, you will.
We do. Yeah. I love that you're right into this, because I think it's, it's one of the things too, that in speaking with the hotel, even their premise as they redesign the hotel experience is local. And it's not enough to be sustainable. Like, I don't need Aveda products. Give me something, give me that beautiful body butter that was made in the hills of the Gatineau. Give me a shampoo that was made in
Well,
Windsor.
I taught it in Stockholm at Hyper Island Institute, and I can tell you the Swedes and the Euros laugh at North Americans. They say you buy 6 pairs of socks for $5 that from made in Asia somewhere by child labor. You wash them twice and they have holes in them. We pay 20 euros for a pair of socks. We give them to our grandchildren.
Yeah, no, I'm sitting here in my
at us.
smart wool socks and they cost me $35, but
There you go.
they'll
You
last
make my
me
point.
forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you, and even older people, and when I say older, I mean people in their 80s now are running Etsy stores. And, I've got one client, she's 87, and she's got a thriving little Etsy business where she makes baby caps, so if you're having a baby.
This is one of the businesses that Lex wrote down. She's like, we could be an
Oh my
Etsy
God,
town.
I love you guys already.
Yeah, you better.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought of with makers, was because I actually have 2 friends who started their own businesses, and one of which she actually created the wrap for the baby on your neck, and now it's huge. And she did that. She started a business in COVID.
Yeah.
And so I know a lot of people are doing that, and I think Etsy is an opportunity because you can work from anywhere, right? As long as you are able to go to the post office and have a space to create what you need.
Oh my gosh, it's so cool. And this lady, she's lives in Abbotsford, so she's having a little struggle right now because they're cut off. But she sells about $2,500 worth of product on Etsy a month. That doesn't sound like a whole lot, but when you know that the average Canada pension plan payout is $620,
she's having a good time.
And Alexi, that gives her a reason to get up every day. And she's got her friends making them now, so that they have this whole thing going on. They're making baby caps, and they send them all over the world. And imagine how much fun it is. Now this lady, she's very with it at 87, and her tech skills are very good. And but just it gives people a reason to get up every day, a reason to live. Like, do you really want to retire one day and sit at home and watch TV all day?
No, but I can have cocktails on the dock or ski all day
You
long.
might.
So I just want you to know,
Listen,
I'm going to be doing it.
Kate, just to back you up on that point, I have a young fellow I coach, young being in his 40s, and he has reached his goal, which we set out to achieve, which is to earn $25,000 a month through his business net in his jeans. And he's achieved that. So I said to him, his first name is Peter. I said, Peter, what is your next act look like? And he said, I don't have one. I said, you don't have one? He said, no, I work 3 hours a week. I make $25,000 a month. So my next act, I've got it all planned out, is I want to play. And I said, Peter, you are the first person I have ever met outside of Jamaica that has said that to me. And which is a true story. And he said, he loves to snowboard and he likes to kiteboard, and he does like this race across the north of Norway, which is really friggin' cold, a 500-kilometer race in the middle of winter, with the snowboard and the kite. It's incredible. Not the dogs, it's the kite that pulls you along. And 500 kilometers, at 20 to 30, sometimes 40 below. So that's what he wants to do. So but that market, I think, for Calabogie is there, but it's a slice, and I think a relatively small slice. The rest of that we've talked about for the last hour or so is where I think most of the market is.
Excellent. Really, really good. Really good.
I don't know if that was helpful, but I hope so. And it was great to meet you guys. I have heard so much about you. Lexi, can you put your contact information in there in the chat box, if you don't mind? If you put your cell number and your email address, I will make sure it gets into my address book, and I will send you this. I'll upload this to YouTube in the next 20 minutes or so. Again, it'll be unlisted. The only people who will have it will be you guys and me.
Amazing.
All right.
Thank you. Good to meet you.
Meet you, Bruce.
I'm glad you had a good time. That was important to us, and we're really glad to have spent it with you.
Yeah, I'm super pleased as well that you're open at least to some some of the ideas that perhaps I presented. And Alexia, I have to tell you this, I'm writing my 85th book, as I mentioned when we started this, and one of the characters in the book, her name is Lexi.
No.
Good.
So as soon as I heard you call Alexia, I thought, oh, that's kind of cool.
I love it. Kismet.
I love it. All right, so
all right, sir.
I'll see you guys.
Thanks,
See you
Bruce.
soon. See you often. Be well.
Yeah, be well too.